Welcome back to the program. So, I have decided to take on a very dangerous task, and that is to continue to call out and expose the Democratic Socialists of America as a terrorist organization. What I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to list you some names of some people that are at the top of the organization and why this organization in particular is much more dangerous than Antifa. We have got to expose them, and we have got to make sure that this administration issues an executive order and designates them as a terrorist organization. This is dangerous work, but it's worth the risk. And why? Because if we can designate this organization, we can smash Mamdani and the DSA, and we can go after them, and we can prosecute them. We can indict them, and we can jail them, imprison them, and get rid of this organization. This is an anti-American communist organization that pretends to be Democrats, when in reality they hate the Democratic Party. They're just using the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party on its whole is stupid and gullible enough to accept their funding. So let's break this down, shall we? Hostile takeover, the DSA's plan to capture American politics. Listen to this. Across the political spectrum, Americans value democracy, fairness, and the freedom of thought. Yet a movement has emerged that directly challenges those ideals, the Democratic Socialists of America. Now, to give you a little background, they've been around since the late 80s, early 90s. This is not a new organization, but they have grown exponentially in power. As its leaders have repeatedly stated, the DSA, are not Democrats. That's the most important thing you need to understand. They are an external force that has infiltrated the Democratic Party to reshape it in their own image. An example, as we talk about, the cuckoo bird. The cuckoo bird lays its eggs in another bird's nest, and then, once those birds get big enough, they throw out the original birds and the eggs and kick them out to their death, because that's what they are. They're cancer. They use certain things, and when they're done with it, they expose or devour or kill whatever's left over. Then it says the DSA is using the party, the infrastructure of the Democratic Party and its reputation while working to replace it with its own extremist agenda. If successful, this project would transform one of America's great political parties, that's debatable these days, into an unrecognizable, even hostile entity to the institutions that define our very country. Let's see here. The combined goals of this alliance, again, the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, and the Democratic Party. See, they're so extreme and so insanely communist that they try to hide behind the scenes. So what do? Is they find certain people that they know believe in their causes, they prop them up, they fund their campaigns, they look for blue districts in blue states for the most part, and they find older, unsuspecting candidates that have lived and been in their districts for many, many years, and then they challenge them. But in this case, they went after the mayorship in New York, and it looks like at this point they're probably going to get it, which should be terrifying to everybody. So they combine their goals by, quote, destroying what they call as the empire, which is, again, that's what the United States is, according to these radicals. They want to replace our free market capitalistic society and economy with state-controlled Marxism, which is exactly the types of things that Mamdani'S talking about implementing or trying to implement in New York. They want to defund the police completely, and they want to use those funds, instead of paying the police, to bring back the DEI and all of those programs. They support terrorism, they support terrorists, and they support terrorist groups such as, of course, Hezbollah, Hamas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram. They love all of them, and they support them all because all of those organizations and those terrorist groups are anti-American. So anything that is against America, they obviously will support. Normalizing anti-Semitism and supporting violent extremist groups. These are flat-out Jew haters. These are Nazis. These are Islamo-fascist Nazis, okay? Islamo-Nazism is what this is. And they absolutely hate Israel. They hate anyone who's Jewish. And they continue with this type of rhetoric on our college campuses and universities. And then they want to promote foreign policies that align with authoritarian regimes such as China, Russia, Iran, Syria, Venezuela. Anyone that has a dictatorship without freedom in another country, that's who they emulate. That's who they want their candidates to take their marching orders from, and they want to bring that ideology into the American stratosphere, into our political content. That's what they want to do, okay? This is an evil, insidious, disgusting group, and it needs to be smashed, okay? It needs to be absolutely smashed. Okay, so more of this is this. Let's talk about their network of influence, okay? This is important here. So obviously one of the first things that they're all about is anti-American activism. So that means they support the CCP. That means they support Antifa. That means they support MoveOn.org. That means they support Act Blue. Any organization out there that is anti-American and is clearly interested in disruption, chaos, and destroying the American way of life. That's who they believe in. Now, the people that are surrounded Mamdani and his campaign, these are all hardcore communists. One name comes up immediately, Francis Gill. Okay, this is an American, anti-American activist. Francis Gill is a DSA leader, member of DSA's 20 to 25 to 20 to 27 National Political Committee, the DSA's governing body, and a third-year psychiatry resident. Well, she ought to get her head examined, okay? She says that the DSA has a unique responsibility to act from the heart of the empire. So, in other words, the belly of the beast, in other words, a cancer within, the enemy within the confines of the United States. I want to make sure that you understand that clearly. Adding that, quote, this is the most important thing that we can do to take the empire down from within. This is the type of language of treason, okay? And this is why we have got to push and push and push to make sure that the DSA is designated as a terrorist organization, and I'll be the motherfucking face of the resistance if I have to. I don't care. I want this organization to be smashed to a million fucking pieces, and I'll do whatever it takes to get it to happen. This is Francis Gill.
And, you know, we have a unique responsibility to act from the heart of...
By the way, a lily white woman, you know, Islamic apologist C-word.
Empire, the belly of the beast. The most important thing that we can do is take that empire down from within.
Take the empire down from within. These people are not playing. Amy Wilhelm, another disgusting fat lesbo, okay? Anti-American activist. Amy Wilhelm is a DSA leader, member again of the 2025-2027 National Political Committee, the DSA's governing body, an enterprise network engineer, calls for overthrowing our empire, meaning overthrowing America. And then you have the, you have a throat slitter in dirty nightshirt. Let's call them what they really are, okay? This guy's name is Ahmed. Here we go. Ahmed Hussein. DSA leader, member of DSA's National Political Committee as well, the governing body, member of Springs of Revolution, a far-left DSA faction, engineer, and Bahraini immigrants to the United States. At a June 5th, 2025 event hosted by New York City's DSA and allies titled Logistics of the Empire, International Shipping and the Fight for a Free Palestine. You know, the invented people, the Palestinian scum. Yeah, those people. Hussein described the United States as, quote, the home of the empire, and urged members to treat domestic organizing as a battlefield, saying, quote, we need to get ready and really creative because it is our duty to be here. We're on the inside. We are in the home of the empire. We're inside the house. It is our job here as it is, as the fight is there, and we are here for this fight. There's multiple fronts, and we have to keep fighting, is what this piece of garbage says. He calls America a, quote, decaying fascist regime and empire, and advocates for the, quote, resistance to break the empire. He's been a DSA member since 2017. Here's another twat. Let's see, her name is Mira Wood, is a member of the DSA's International Committee who has been active with DSA since at least 2018. Administrator of the Babachki Collective, a fund managed by communist financier James Chambers to support bail for anyone from any group facing any charges. Calls for the destruction of America, saying, quote, there's always room to say death to Israel and death to America, and glad we agree America, with 3 Ks, by the way, should be destroyed. Again, death to Israel, death to America. These are subversive Americans that need the FBI on their tail. They should not be able to breathe our motherfucking air without an FBI agent knowing about it, as far as I'm concerned. Here's another twat. Hazel Williams. I'm leaving this one public too, because I want to make sure that this goes out there everywhere. I'm gonna put money on it. I want it to go everywhere. Okay? Everywhere. Hazel Williams is a DSA leader and member, 2025-2027 National Political Committee, DSA governing body, calls for the destruction of America, saying, quote, U.S. imperialism is not a thing that can be reformed away. It has to be overthrown through revolutionary struggle. These people are Americans. Most of them are Americans. Most of them are women. And most of them are vehemently against America. They are subversive cancer that live among us, and they need to be destroyed. They need to be destroyed. Okay? Here's another one. Sarah Millner. This is a trans-testicle fruitcake. Okay? Let's call it what it really is. Sarah Miller, probably his name is real name is Joe Bob Jones or something, right? Is a DSA fruitcake psychopath member, and of course part of the governing body, and a letter carrier. Oh, imagine that. Imagine seeing this fruitcake walking around your neighborhood delivering mail. Calls for the overthrow of the United States under, quote, undemocratic political systems. Listen to this fruitcake with, I don't know, purple hair and nose
to the
rings.
Democratic Party is central to our entire project.
You're a guy, faggot. You'll never be a woman.
Of building working class power in DSA. We are socialists. The Democratic Party is not. We are anti-imperialists. The Democratic Party is not. We stand for the power of the working class. The Democratic Party does not. We are an actually democratic organization. The Democratic Party is not. And yet we are tied in with the Democratic Party. Almost all of our most prominent elected officials were elected on the Democratic ballot line. More and more, we are...
Like I said, they are a cancer that has metastasized, attached itself to an unwitting, an unknowing host, although maybe sometimes they are actually accepting of it. But most of the time, they're probably not. They pretend to be Democrats, but in private, They're not Democrats. They're revolutionary Marxist communists, and they need to be destroyed.
Seeing that this means our electoral project is built on hostile territory twice over.
Sick freaks. Yeah. Go cut your pecker off and shove it down your throat, Milner. That's what I say. DSA Liberation Caucus. They have their own caucus as well, okay? The far-left DSA Liberation Caucus believes, quote, the United States is a settler colony. It is not a nation. It is a prison house of nations, with the Euro-Americans being the jailers. This is what this sick bastards say. They say that the U.S. was, quote, founded on stolen land with stolen labor. Thus, socialism in the United States requires the liberation of oppressed Black, Chicano, Indigenous, Puerto Rican, Hawaiian, and any other people who we deem important, who have been reduced by this country's machinations. Otherwise, it will be just another form of imperialism with a red flag. Then they say the United States remains the number one enemy of the global majority. It is the United States which continues to prop up the fascist settlers' colony of Israel, enabling it to murder our class siblings in Palestine. What class siblings? There's no such thing as Palestine. There's no such thing as Palestinians. They're nothing but made up, fake, invented people. Okay? That's the truth. Unbelievable. But no, they don't want to look at the history, do they? Nope, not at all. Here's some more. The DSA Marxist Unity Group is a far-left DSA faction, calls for socialists to, quote, fight to overthrow the Constitution, denouncing it as a tool of capitalists and slaves, and demanding that its legitimacy be destroyed through agitation and revolution. DSA Red Star Caucus. The Red Star Caucus is another faction of the DSA, openly declares that it strives to weaken and ultimately dismantle the United States empire, insisting that socialists must oppose America at every turn and reject any position that does not directly undermine U.S. power. And then there's the DSA International Committee. Whoops. Here it is. The DSA International Committee is under the auspices of the DSA National Political Committee. With approval from the DSA National Political Committee, the DSA International Committee released a statement in 2019 saying that the DSA stands for the total dissolution of the United States. Do you understand what I'm saying? These people are talking publicly about the overthrow of the United States government. Okay? You can't get any more subversive and treasonous than that. Then it says DSA is committed to the full decolonization of all the occupied lands in the United States, self-determination, and full sovereignty for, quote, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, American Samoa, Guam, Northern Mariana Islands, Virgin Islands, and to all indigenous nations. Unbelievable. Then it says, whose ancestral lands are within current U.S. borders, as well as to the independence to all overseas territories and dependencies controlled, occupied, and otherwise exploited by the USA. National DSA. The National DSA organization casts itself as a movement explicitly built to confront U.S. power, describing itself as the need for a, quote, broad, disciplined left to challenge imperialism, writing that the best tool we have to fight imperialism is a mass, resilient socialist organization. They frame the current U.S. government as, quote, an evil empire, categorizing it as imperialism, white supremacy, and evil. Mamdani is an active member of the DSA. The New York City DSA Inner Circle. Mamdani's rise is inseparable from the New York City DSA chapter that produced him to begin with. As the largest DSA chapter in the entire country, New York City DSA drives the strategy, the field operations, and the messaging discipline behind every single candidate's campaign. This section introduces key members who engineered his primary victory, mobilized his voter base and volunteer base, and remain among his closest political allies, assuring that they will all be members of his cabinet if he is to become the mayor. And there's a lot of these people. I'll name some of their names. Grace Mauser is the co-chair of the New York City DSA, credited as one of the key architects of New York City's DSA electoral program and Mamdani'S primary victory. Again, I guess another white woman, of course, right? Why wouldn't there be? And then it says, in 2023, Mauser spoke about DSA's electoral strategy, saying, quote, "When we do win, we have to know that having a DSA elected person is nearly useless if they aren't using their own legislative power, district services, and platform to help us actually achieve our real goals on reforming housing, unions, healthcare, and much more. Winning an office isn't the end of the journey, it's just the beginning." This is what this evil twat says.
When we do win, we have to know that having a DSA elected is nearly useless if they aren't using their legislative power, district services, and platform to help us actually achieve our real goals on housing, unions, healthcare, and more. Winning an office isn't the end of the journey, so to say. But all that to say, elected officials, I think we all know, are not going to solve our problems for us. They have to be actively organized and worked with as comrades, and so that we can use the power of their offices in our larger fights.
You know, most of these kids, and that's what they are, they're kids, are Nepo babies, or they grew up with wealth and they've never had to work a day in their life, and they were just, sitting on their ass in their house during COVID, playing video games, jerking off, doing whatever they're doing. None of them have had a job. None of them have ever had to work. None of them have to pay taxes. None of them have ever owned a business. None of them have any life experience. So naturally, they're not going to appreciate capitalism. They're not going to appreciate lower taxes, lower spending, more freedom. These are revolutionary little eunuchs, okay? Both sexes, for that matter, because they're interchangeable these days anyway, according to these freaks, right? These people need to be destroyed. They need to be destroyed. Do you understand what I'm saying? Destroyed. And the only way that's going to happen is if President Trump issues an executive order designating the Democratic Socialists of America as a fucking terrorist organization. A treasonous, subversive, terrorist organization. Once that's done, the tools open up, and you can go into this organization. You can find out their funding. You can find out all their crazy ties to Hamas terrorists, Hezbollah terrorists, CARE, all these other organizations. And guess what? Any politician that is supported, funded, or has given money to this organization, once it is declared a terrorist organization, can now be prosecuted, indicted, imprisoned, and hopefully for life. Okay? And they can be completely defunded because the Treasury Secretary can go in and find out everything that they need to know about this organization and go after the people that are funding it and dismantle this organization. This organization must be dismantled. It must be dismantled. I reached out to Alan Dershowitz today, and I told him to reach out to President Trump. I reached out to Wayne Allen Root. Hopefully, maybe I'll be back on his show sometime this week to talk about this more publicly. I reached out to Pete Santilli. Same thing. Maybe I'll be back on his show to talk about it. I am not going to let this go, okay? I am going to be a fucking bulldog on this, and I want to see action on this. So I also want you to take this show, and I want you to put it everywhere. I don't give a shit where you put it. I don't care if you email it to people. I don't care if you pick people out of a fucking phone book, if we still have those, and just send it to them either. I want this organization to go down, and I am willing to do and say whatever it takes to get the job done. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.